Peace, hotel family. In the building, about to go live in a minute. Just want to make sure my sound is good. Anyone's watching, but we're gonna sit and wait and see if anybody show up and take it from there. Okay, we got one person watching. Who's ever watching, could you leave a comment and let me know that if you can hear me or not? Yeah, but we're gonna sit tight for a while and see if more people show up. Yeah, just give me a minute. Hey, peace. If anybody is there, holler if you hear me. Let me know what's up. Yeah, for those of you watching, and I will mention it again, yesterday's live stream was a disaster and it was frustrating. And unfortunately, that video was taken down. So, but we covered a lot. I'm going to make it short today. But as you can see, the name of the video is Egyptians in West Africa and in the Horn of Africa. Because there are some things we have to clear up, some truths that we have to put forth. Okay. But if there's anybody in the building, let me know. Because I know I originally scheduled this live stream for 3:30, but I decided to have it early. So but I can assure you that this live stream will be a whole lot better than what it was yesterday. So yeah, but we're gonna sit and wait so more people show up, so that way I can know if I'm, if my sound is good and all. So all right. So we got two people in the building. Whoa. Okay. Okay, so we got 2 people watching. Okay. So I know I'm good on the sound because I just looked at my own live stream and I got a little echo. So, but yeah, for the person that's just tuning in, I'm just letting you know that, you know, this will be a better live stream than what it was yesterday, because yesterday was very frustrating and it was a disaster because I didn't get the freedom that I wanted. But this will be a better live stream than what it was yesterday. So okay, now we have 2 people. Feel free to leave a comment, you know, leave a shout out, whatever. Just a minute. Okay, so 8 minutes has passed by already. Okay, it says 1 person is in the building. I don't know if that's just myself or if somebody's actually watching. So um, but yeah, so we're going to get off into it. Now, this video is titled "Egyptians in West Africa," and whoever joins in later, I'll keep you updated on what's going on. But yeah, it is titled "Egyptians in West Africa." Now, there was the user from yesterday when we had the live stream yesterday. The user that goes by the name of Boko Ray, he left a comment saying that West Africa was uninhabited before the medieval periods. And he said his source was al-Masudi, the Arab historian al-Masudi. So I got that source and we're going to pull it up. Okay. So let's go to it. All right. Now, So when we go to Al-Masudi, okay, according to Boko Ray, okay, um, according to Boko Ray, West Africa was uninhabited. According to Al-Masudi, well, let's go to Al-Masudi, okay, and it says. Okay. Yeah, Al-Masudi. It was the book called Metals of Gold. And he says, when the children of Noah parted from one another, the children of Cush went westwards beyond the Nile of Egypt, then divided themselves. A part of them took the way towards the south, scattering east and west. They are the Nuba, who are the Nubians, the Buja, and the Zanj. The other part proceeded towards the west. They are the many branches, such as the Zagawa, the Kanim, the Marka, the Kaukau, and Ghana. So this is what he said proves that West Africa was uninhabited. Well, we noticed that Nubia and the Beja and the Zanj, which is East Africa, or the modern day Sudan and the Horn of Africa, is also mentioned. So if you're going to say that West Africa was uninhabited because of this, then you're going to have to admit that East Africa was also uninhabited, because it's saying that the same people went south into Nubia, into the land of Sudan and the Horn of Africa. So I don't know what was your point there, but you're definitely wrong on that. But yeah, just give me a minute. Okay. Yeah. So I got my new microphone. I won't have to. All right, good. We got a comment from Reginald Gilbert saying you're good. All right, appreciate that. All right, appreciate that, Reginald Gilbert. Gilbert. Okay. So now, for those of you who just tuning in, I was reading the quote from Al-Masudi, because a user yesterday said that West Africa was uninhabited before the medieval period. And the quote mentions that the same people that went to West Africa also went south into East Africa and into Sudan. So I was saying that if he's going to say that West Africa was uninhabited because of this, he's going to have to admit that East Africa was also uninhabited. So, but yeah, but let's get off into this quote and see what it really means. Now, the video is ancient Egyptians in West Africa. Okay. Now, before I get off into the sources, okay, I just want to say that many of our people today are out of touch with the ancient world. Yes, you're out of touch with the ancient world, and you're following all of these modern day fields of study, okay, that's trying to divide Africa and whitewash Egypt and trying to draw African Americans away from Egypt, pretty much trying to take you out the picture of claiming Egyptian civilization. And it's all coming from the white European, the white racists, okay? Now, to the white racists, or to the white European, to Europeans as a whole, okay? To all Europeans, stop it, okay? Stop it with your lies. You have nothing to do with ancient Egypt, okay? If you want to know who your ancestors are the Gauls, the Celts, okay? The Britons, the Iberians in Western Europe. That's who you are. Okay, stop trying to deprive African Americans and all other Africans from their rights and their lineage to ancient Egypt because you want to hijack it. And that's why they're coming out with all these, these fake fields of study that has nothing to do with the ancient world. Okay, nothing to do at all. Okay, and they just want to neglect the ancient sources that connects us to ancient Egypt. Okay, but we're going to get off into that today. Okay, we're going to get off into that, and I'm going to show the relationship and the kinship between the people of Sudan, the Horn of Africa, in West Africa, in our connection to ancient Egypt. We have to get this cleared. Okay, this has to be talked about. The truth must be set forth. Everything must be laid out on the table. Okay, so, but I'm going to go back to that quote. Now, this is the quote for all of you that just tuning in. I'm touching on the user yesterday, Boko Ray, who said that West Africa was uninhabited due to this quote from Al Masudi. Okay, and I'm gonna prove him wrong. But just a minute, give me 1 minute. Okay, yeah, I'm back. But yeah, we definitely have to get this cleared away. Now, when you look at other users that did a video on this subject, such as the brother Asar Imhotep, and I also seen a lecture on Sonnet TV of someone doing a lecture on ancient Egyptians in West Africa. Now, the problem I have with these lectures is the sources. The sources that they use are too late. I mean, they were constantly using 18th century, 19th century sources to prove ancient Egyptians in West Africa. That, I'm sorry, although what's coming from those sources may sound good, it is totally invalid. Yes, it is invalid because it's not contemporary with the time. It's like so far away from the time. It's just as good as made up. I'm sorry, you can't use a 17th century source based on hearsay, okay, to prove that ancient Egyptians in West Africa. You must have a foundational source first, and then you can get off into those later sources. But yeah, I'm going to be dealing with the ancient original sources, okay, that shows ancient Egyptians in West Africa and Egyptians in the Horn of Africa. And it's time. It's definitely time for Black people to reclaim Egypt, okay? And we should be getting Black Americans and even other sub-Saharan Africans should be granted citizenship in Egypt because we have a deep connection to ancient Egypt. Okay, it is no secret that when ancient Egypt fell, or when ancient Egypt was in trouble, they always fled to the south, which I will show. They always went south. And even during the conquest, okay, the armies that were sent out by Pharaoh, they settled and established themselves south and southwest of Egypt. Southwest is West Africa. Yes, south is modern day Sudan and Horn of Africa. So that's what we're going to get off into today. But let's go here. So we're going to go back to that quote, okay, to Al-Masudi, okay. So for those of you that just tuning in, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. It says, when the children of Noah parted from one another, the children of Cush went westward, beyond the Nile of Egypt, then divided themselves. A part of them took the way towards the south, scattering east and west. They are the Nuba, the Buja or the Beja, and the Zanj. The other part proceeded towards the west. They are the many branches of the Zagawa, the Kanim, the Marka, the Kaukau, and the Ghana. Now, the first part, when it says the children of Noah parted from one another, and the children of Cush went westwards, well, that's a migration that never happened. Okay, that only happened during the time of the Assyrian Empire, but it didn't happen no earlier than that. And it says and also that migration is not mentioned in the Bible. We find nowhere in the Bible of the sons of Ham, the sons of Cush, or anybody migrating west from the Euphrates to Egypt. That doesn't exist in the Bible. The Bible clearly says that the sons of Cush or the sons of Ham were indigenous to Africa. They didn't come from anywhere else. And I went over that yesterday. But yeah, that migration, when it says the children of Noah parted from one another, the children of Cush went westwards beyond the Nile of Egypt. That migration from the Euphrates to Egypt historically took place in the 8th century, I want to say the 7th century BCE, during the time when the Assyrian Empire went out on their conquest, and they even came to Egypt and conquered Egypt. That is the first time we hear historically of a migration from the Tigris Euphrates coming into Egypt. So that can only be tied to that. Okay. When it's the next part, it says they divided themselves. A part of them took the way towards the south. They are the Nuba, the Buja, and the Zanj. Now, the Nuba are the Nubians. The Buja are the Beja, and the Zanj are the people on the Red Sea, which are the Eritreans and the Somalians. Now, this migration historically took place during the 18th dynasty. Yes, during the 18th dynasty, when the Egyptians migrated and conquered the land of Cush, and they also went further south into the land of Punt when they sailed the Red Sea and went into the land of Punt. And the hieroglyphics mention their voyage or their journey into the land of Punt and into Cush, but this is saying that they actually settled there. So it's saying in the Nuba, the Buja, you know, they came from Egypt. So it's talking about a north to south migration from Egypt to Cush. And we know that that did happen during the 18th dynasty. So I'm going to go to it right quick. But yeah, and then it also says the other part, okay, proceeded towards the west. They are the many branches of the Zagawa, the Kanim, the Marka, the Kaukau, and the Ghana. So it's talking about a migration from Nubia to Chad in the west, and to Niger in Nigeria further west, and to Ghana further west on the Atlantic, which what we know as Mauritania, because the Empire of Ghana is located in today's Mauritania. And when these Egyptians who calls themselves the descendants of Cush or the sons of Cush, arrived there, of course, they grew in numbers and they mixed with the local population that's already there. So there's definitely a deep connection between the Horn of Africans and the people of West Africa, and we have ties to Egypt. Okay, so yes, definitely, this truth is coming out slowly but surely, and the world must know that the sub-Saharan Africans are the true descendants of the ancient Egyptians or the pharaohs. Okay, when those sub-Saharan Africans come into North Africa seeking refuge, okay, to you North African, you Berbers or whatever you call yourself, people of North Africa, with the slave trade going on in Libya and the mistreatment of Black Africans from the sub-Saharan Africa region, you need to treat those Africans with the utmost respect, okay, because those Africans are the true descendants of the pharaohs, okay? And even in places such as Israel, okay, when Africans come there seeking refuge, you need to treat them with the utmost respect, because those are the true descendants of the pharaoh. We are the true descendants of the pharaohs, okay? And I'm going to show and prove that. And I don't have to go that deep. I don't. Yes, we got brother Ma'at Forever, okay, in the building. Hotep Sin, and Hotep to you too, brother. Good to have you in the building. I'm just going over a lesson connecting West Africa with the Nile Valley and using the ancient original sources to do so. Sub-Saharan Africans, okay, are the closest kinsmen to the ancient Egyptians. And I'm going to show that, okay? And so without further ado, let's get off into the sources. Now, I have dealt with Boko Ray's claim that West Africa was uninhabited before the medieval period, which I proved to be a lie. Okay, it was always inhabited. Okay, and when Al-Masudi speak of this migration from Egypt to Kush, he is talking about the Egyptians. Now I'm going to show you something when it says the sons of Kush. Now let's go back to that. It says the children of Kush went westward beyond the Nile of Egypt, and part of them took the way towards the south. Okay, now the south of Egypt was already the land of Kush, so it had nothing to do with, with Kushites coming from Asia. Had nothing to do with that. It was already called the land of Kush, and the people that's migrating there, which are the Nuba, the Beja, and the Zanj, they are called the sons of Kush because they are entering, they are arriving in the land of Kush. So therefore, they are called the son of Kush. And the writers of this knew that this was the land of Kush. So, but let us go to the ancient records of Egypt briefly here. Okay, then we're going to move on after that. Okay, I'm going to go to the ancient records of Egypt, the 18th dynasty. Okay, and I'm just going to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, all right. So I always like to go to the earliest mention. Okay, but it doesn't matter. So when it says that the sons of Cush, according to Al-Masudi, migrated south, the people who were calling themselves the sons of Cush were Egyptians. Now, this is from the tomb of Hu, and who lived during the 18th dynasty, during the time of King Tutankhamun. Okay. Okay. And Hugh was the governor of Kush. Okay. Now, and it says, okay, in the ancient records of Egypt, okay, volume 3, page 425. Okay, it says, before Hugh, the arrival in peace from the house of the head the heredity, the arrival in peace from the house of the hereditary prince, count, priest, the king's son of Cush, Hugh, having received the favor of the Lord of the two lands. Okay, so we have here that this person Hugh, who was Egyptian, calling himself the king's son of Cush. Okay, saying the arrival in peace from the house of the hereditary prince, count, priest, the king's son of Cush. So it was the Egyptians who were calling themselves the king's son of Cush. So when you hear that the sons of Cush migrating south and west, these were Egyptians. Yes. Historically, they were Egyptians. Okay. Now, if there were no historical evidence or historical documents to back up this claim, then we can dismiss it as a myth, or we can dismiss it as a migration that never happened. But this was a migration that actually happened. Although al-Masudi, he tried to make it seem as if the migration was coming from the Tigris Euphrates, but we see here that migration did not take place to the Assyrian Empire, but the migration from north to south took place during the 18th dynasty. And wherever al-Masudi got this information from, about this migration, this is when that migration took place. Okay, so we see here, and then he says, the chiefs of Cush, they say, hail to thee, O king of Egypt, son of the Baals. Give us breath which thou givest. Man live by love. Okay. But yeah, this is one instance where he is called the king's son of Cush. Okay. And then again, he says, coming from the tomb of Hugh during the 18th dynasty, the coming forth of the people of the king's son to receive him when he received the favor of the Lord of the two lands from the house of the king's son of Cush, the king's scribe Amenhotep. Okay. And he says, over the boats, arrival from Cush, bearing this good tribute of all the choices of the best of the south countries, landing at the city of the south of Thebes by the king's son of Cush, Hugh. So we see that these king's sons of Cush that al-Masudi is speaking of migrating south and west were Egyptians. See, thanks to these records in the archaeology and the many Egyptian monuments that we see in Nubia and in Sudan today, that we can connect this migration and connect our ancestors to Egypt. Because if it didn't exist, then we will have nothing to connect to. Okay, I would not be here teaching you this lesson. Okay, so we see here that the king's sons of Cush, the people of Nubia, okay, the people of the Horn of Africa, the Beja, and the people of Zagawa and Chad, okay, in West Africa, all come from the same Egyptian origin. Yes. This is what it's saying. Saying that the indigenous Black Africans who inhabited sub-Saharan Africa had Egyptian migrants settled amongst them. Okay. And as I talked about yesterday, that with the Ethiopians, the Eastern Ethiopians and the Western Ethiopians, the Eastern Ethiopians in Sudan built temples because it was called the land of the living. It was known as the land of the living. But the Western Ethiopians in West Africa did not build temples because it was the land of the dead. It was a place of rest for the gods. You can look it up. But they were all the same race and they come from the same Egyptian origin. Okay? We're dealing with Egyptians here. I just want to make that very clear. And those racist white authorities who lived during the 17 and 1800s, they knew this. I'm sure they did, but they wanted to keep the truth hidden away from us. And they did not want us to claim our true Egyptian origin. Now, just think about that for a minute, okay? How powerful it is to say that you are a descendant of the ancient Egyptians. I mean, that's powerful. It's one thing to say that, well, we are related to the ancient Egyptians and we are kinsmen to the ancient Egyptians, but we're not descendants. But to say that you are a descendant of the ancient Egyptians is probably one of the most highest honors you can receive, because you're saying that you have the blood of the pharaohs running through your veins. That's how powerful it is. Those temples, those pyramids, those statues that sit in Egypt, okay, that belongs to you. That is tied to you. That's why I say that Black Americans should be given citizenship in Egypt, and we should be given some authority over the temples and the artifacts in Egypt. Okay, because I feel that we can do a better job teaching about ancient Egypt than these racist Europeans or these white Egyptologists. Okay. See, now when we deal with the white Egyptologists, okay, we're dealing with Europeans who just have a love for Egypt, but they're not connected to Egypt. They just have a love connect to Egypt. That's why they cannot tell this truth I am telling you. Okay, with us, it is different. Yes, with Black Americans and sub-Saharan Africans, it is different, because with us, this is our ancestors. This is who we are. So this is why we must entertain this truth, the truth that they don't want to entertain. Okay? This is our ancestors. This is us. So it's different when it comes to us. We cannot be a copycat of these white Egyptologists. We have to tell the truth. They're not telling the whole truth. Yes, they like to go on and on about, the artifacts and, the archaeology and the kings, but they never talk about who are the descendants. Where are the descendants of these people? That is us. Only sub-Saharan Africans are the descendants of the ancient Egyptians. Okay? And when it comes to the modern Egyptians, we have to keep in mind that every time when the ancient Egyptians were in trouble, they always took Egypt back, okay? Because Egyptians were in Egypt. But during the time of 343 BCE, during the reign of the last pharaoh, Nectanebo II, when the Persians took Egypt, the Egyptians did not take Egypt back. The Greeks took over Egypt, then after the Greeks, the Romans, then after the Romans, the Arabs. The Egyptians never took Egypt back. Why? Because there were no Egyptians in Egypt to take Egypt back. They were all in sub-Saharan Africa, which I'm going to show, okay? But we're going to get off into some sources here, okay? But I already showed you that these people mentioned by al-Masudi, and also it is mentioned by al-Yaqubi, the Arab historian, when he mentions the sons of Cush migrating from north to south and from east to west. These people called the sons of Cush were Egyptians. They were Egyptians coming into the land of Cush. That's what you have to understand. It had nothing to do with Cushites coming from Asia or from Mesopotamia and coming into Africa and finding Cush. No, the land of Cush was already there. And these migrants from the north, when they arrived there, they were known as the sons of Cush because they were coming into the land of Cush. Okay, that's what you have to understand. Okay, they were coming into the land of Cush. They were therefore called the sons of Cush. These were Egyptians. Okay, but now let's move on to the next source. Okay, and I'm going to touch on that and show how this connects to the Ethiopians. Now, but I already showed you that the Egyptians in the land of Cush. Now I'm going to show you a passage from Herodotus, okay, book 2, okay, and he says, in quote, book 2, chapter 110, and he says, okay, no, I'm sorry, book 2, chapter, okay, book 2, chapter 102. And he says, passing over these monarchs, therefore, I shall speak of the king who reigned next, whose name was Sesostris. He, the priest said, first of all, proceeded in a fleet of ships of war from the Arabian Gulf along the shores of the Erythraean Sea, subduing the nations as he went. Okay, so this is saying here that Sesostris, a king of Egypt. Okay, now Sesostris, some said that this was Ramesses, but from reading this, I would say that this was Tutmos III, and Sesostris is the name that was used for many kings that lived during the New Kingdom, and this king can be tied to pretty much all the kings of the New Kingdom. So, but it's talking about a conquest. Okay, when he says Sesostris proceeded in a fleet of ships from the Arabian Gulf, okay, which is in the Red Sea, along the shores of the Erythraean Sea. Now, when he says along the shores of the Erythraean Sea, he is talking about the east coast of Africa. He's talking about the Horn of Africa, okay, saying that Sesostris. And we also read that, in the annals of ancient Egypt, that this was the land of Punt. So when he says the shores of the Erythraean Sea, he's talking about the Horn of Africa, the land of Punt. And we're going to go here to further down to he mentions a settlement showing you how the Egyptians settled in these lands. And he says, in this way, he, meaning Sesostris, traversed the whole continent of Asia, whence he passed on into Europe and made himself master of Scythia and of Thrace, beyond which countries I do not think that his army extended its march. For thus far, the pillars which he erected are still visible, but in the remoter regions, they are no longer found. Returning to Egypt from Thrace, he came on his way to the banks of the river Phasis. Here I cannot say with any certainty what took place, either of he or of his own accord, detached a body of troops from his main army and left them to colonize the country, or else a certain number of his soldiers, weary of their long wanderings, deserted and established themselves on the banks of this river. Okay, so he's pretty much saying that the army of Sesostris, okay, a army of Egyptians established themselves along the river Phasis. and became the ancestors of the Colchians. Okay, and he says here in the next chapter, there can be no doubt that the Colchians are an Egyptian race. Before I heard any mention of the fact from others. Okay, then he says further down, okay, that still the Egyptians said that they believed the Colchians to be descended from the army of Sesostris. My own conjectures were founded first on the fact that they are black-skinned and have woolly hair. Okay, so this is saying that Herodotus is saying that the Colchians were known to be descendants of the army of Sesostris. So this shows that when Egyptians migrated to other lands, it didn't just take place after the fall of Egypt. It took place during the conquest and during the glory days of Egypt. They settled in other lands. That's what Herodotus is saying. And he says clearly that the Colchians, who were descendants of Egyptians, were black-skinned and had woolly hair. Okay, now these soldiers must have been very black. Okay, very black. Because the word used for black is melos. Okay, and it is the opposite of white. And notice, all throughout Herodotus, the only people he calls black are the Ethiopians and Egyptians. And the white Egyptologists or the white races would want you to believe that the Egyptians were the same as the Middle Easterners, such as the Persians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians. But guess what? Herodotus does not call the Persians and the Assyrians and the Arabians black. He only calls the Egyptians and the Ethiopians black. So that goes to show you that the Egyptians were seen as different from the Asiatics in the Middle East. Shows you that the Egyptians were more closer to the Ethiopians, but were different from the Asiatics in the Middle East. Because nowhere in Herodotus we find him saying that the Persians, the Assyrians, and the Arabians and the Phoenicians were black. He only calls the Egyptians black and the Ethiopians black, showing you who was really black. But yeah, that goes to show you that during the glory days of Egypt, they sent out colonies into other parts of Asia, into the south of Kush, and into West Africa, all in the southern interior parts of Africa. Okay, this is what it's saying. And we have to own it and we have to take it back. But yeah, let's go to some other accounts here. Okay. Dealing with the Ethiopians. Let's see here. Now, but I want to touch on this as well. Okay. Now we're going to go to Strabo, the geographer, who lived during the 1st century BCE. Now, he called the Horn of Africa the troglodyte country. Okay. But I wouldn't say that was a real name, but he called it the troglodyte country. And he says here in book 17, okay, he says, give me a minute here. Let's go here. Okay. Yeah, book 17. And he says, as far as the straits, 4,500 stadia in a direction towards the east, the straits are formed towards Ethiopia by a promontory called Dari, okay, and by a town bearing the name of bearing the same name, which is inhabited by the Ichiophagi, meaning fish eaters. Okay, but the land he is talking about, he says on the top part, he says the part opposite the troglodyte country, okay, as far as Ptolemais, in the country where elephants are captured, extends 9,000 stadia
towards the south and slightly in the direction of the east. Okay, this is talking about the east coast of Africa going towards the south. And when you go south and you reach the Gulf of Aden, that is what it's called, you go east and reach the Horn of Africa of Somalia. Okay, and it says further down, it is said that there's a pillar of Sesostris, the Egyptian, which tells the hieroglyphics of his passage across the Gulf. For manifestly, he was the first man to subdue the country of the Ethiopians and the troglodytes. Okay, and he then crossed into Arabia and invaded the whole of Asia. So it's saying that Sesostris, this king, the Egyptian king, okay, conquered Ethiopia and the troglodyte country. Now, the troglodyte country was the east coast of Africa, okay, which was modern day Eritrea, Somalia, or the land of Punt. And it's saying that he set up pillars here and set up also shrines of Isis. And some of this still can be seen today in the Horn of Africa. But yeah, so it's pretty much saying that the Horn of Africa was reached and was also settled by Egyptians during the time of his king Sesostris, which is the Middle Kingdom. Okay, and yeah, and we're gonna go here to this. Okay. And it talks about, it gives us a geography of the people of south of Egypt. And he says, Strabo, book 17, again, book 17, chapter 1, chapter 2, he says, the lower parts of the country on either side of Meroe along the Nile towards the Red Sea are inhabited by Magabari and Blemies, who are subject to the Ethiopians and border on the Egyptians, and along the sea by troglodytes, which is the Red Sea. Troglodytes. The troglodytes opposite Meroe are a 10 or 12 days journey distance from the Nile. But the parts on the left side of the course of the Nile in Libya are inhabited by Nube, which is the Nubians, a large tribe who, beginning at Meroe, extend as far as the bends of the river and are not subject to the Ethiopians, but are divided into several separate kingdoms. So he's pretty much saying here that the people on the left bank of the Nile or the west bank of the Nile were the Nubians, okay? And the people on the east bank of the Nile were known as the Magabari or the Blemies, okay? Okay, and so that goes to show that it's given a description of the people south of Egypt according to Strabo. Okay, and let us go here. Okay, but so you get a better understanding of who these Ethiopians were. Okay. Okay, let us go here. Wait a minute. Okay, just a minute. Let's see here. Okay. Now, when we deal with the territory of the Ethiopians, okay, I'm going to show you where their territory began and where their territory ended. And let's see here. Okay. But he goes on to say, Strabo again, book 17, chapter 49, he says, a little above the cataract lies Philae, a common settlement of Ethiopians and Egyptians, which is built like Elephantine. And it also has Egyptian temples. So we see here that the border of the Ethiopians was right after Philae, right after Egypt. Okay. So the Ethiopians dwelt directly south of Egypt and further south. Okay, and then he goes down here to say in chapter 53, now Egypt was generally inclined to peace from the outset because of the self-sufficiency of the country and the difficulty of invasion by outsiders, being protected on the north by a harborless coast and by the Egyptian Sea, and on the east and west by the desert mountains of Libya and Arabia. And the remaining parts towards the south are inhabited by troglodytes, Blemies, Nubé, and Magabari, those Ethiopians who live about Syene, which is modern day Aswan, okay? Showing that the people south of Egypt were known as Ethiopians, okay? There was no boundary for the Ethiopians. Their territory was vast, okay? And now that we dealt with the Ethiopians south of Egypt, we're going to go to another part where Strabo mentions Ethiopians in another area of Africa, okay? Let's see how we're doing here, okay? Okay, so we have 6 people listening, okay? Okay, but yeah, let's go to Strabo, book 17, chapter 3, okay? And he goes on to say here, book 17, chapter 3. He says, this then is my account of Libya as a whole, but I must describe in detail, beginning with its western and most famous parts, okay? So he's given a description of the most western part of Libya. And he says, here dwell a people whom the Greeks call Marusians. Marusians is another name, is the ancient name for the Moors. So the people we know today as the Moors were called the Marusians by the Greeks. He says, here dwell a people whom the Greeks call Marusians, and the Romans call, and the natives call Mari, a large and prosperous Libyan tribe who live on the side of the strait opposite Iberia, which is Spain. Here also is the strait which is at the Pillars of Hercules, which was the Straits of Gibraltar, concerning which I have spoken. On proceeding outside the Pillars of Hercules, with Libya on the left, one comes to a mountain which the Greeks call Atlas, and the barbarians or the natives call Diodorus. So we see here that according to Strabo, okay, the most western people of Libya, or on the Straits of Gibraltar, which was known as the Pillars of Hercules, were called the Marusians, who were the same people we know today as the Moors. And he also says, here also is the strait which is at the Pillars of Hercules, okay? And he says, on proceeding outside the strait at the pillars with Libya on the left, one comes to a mountain which the Greeks call Atlas. So we see here, even the coast outside of the Pillars of Hercules was known as Libya, okay? Showing you how vast and how large this area was. It went from the south of Egypt to the Pillars of Hercules to the Straits, and then it continued outside beyond the Pillars of Hercules, okay, going far south as Cameroon and Angola. Okay, so Libya literally means west of the Nile River. Okay, not just the west bank of the Nile, but all the land west of the Nile River. So some of you, it may sound crazy to some of you, okay? But it may sound crazy to some of you to say that Libya was far west, was 3,000 miles west of Egypt. You know, but it is what it is. And how can you say that These people crossed the Sahara Desert, 3,000 miles. The Sahara Desert is impassable. No, it is not. The Sahara Desert is not impassable. Okay, the Sahara Desert has been crossed many a times. Okay, but let's continue. Okay, so now we see here that according to Strabo, okay, just to give a brief summary, according to Strabo, Libya, the land of Libya, also went beyond the Pillars of Hercules, and it continued along the coast of Africa on the Atlantic, from Morocco all the way down to Mauritania, all the way south to Guinea and Cameroon. That was the territory of Libya, and it was inhabited by the same people. So, and he says here, okay, further below, he says, above Maruja, on the outside sea, lies the country of the Western Ethiopians, as they are called. Now, Strabo here is saying that when he says above Maruja, outside the sea, lies the country of the Western Ethiopians. Now, above is the word used is Mesembria, meaning south. So it's pretty much saying south of Maruja, on the outside sea, lies the country of the Western Ethiopians. So he's saying here that south of the Moors was inhabited by Ethiopians. This is coming from a Greek geographer who lived in the 1st century BCE. So we see here that not only the people south of Egypt were called Ethiopians, the people south of Morocco and south of Mauritania were also called Ethiopians. Okay? Showing you that these people in West Africa were one in the same race and come from the same origin as these people south of Egypt. Okay? And as I explained yesterday, that the information on the territory of the Ethiopians derives from the Egyptians. Okay? This is coming from the Egyptians. From the Egyptians who knew about this territory. Okay? Okay? It was from the Egyptians. But let's move on. As I was saying yesterday about the Libyans in the north. Okay, so we're going to get a better understanding of who the Libyans were in the north, according to Strabo. Now, I read a quote yesterday from Herodotus, book 2, chapter 4. Take note of that. Book 2, no, from Herodotus, book 4, chapter 197, where he mentions the 4 nations that inhabit Libya, which was the Libyans, the Greeks and the Phoenicians in the north, and the Ethiopians in the south. Okay, but we're going to get a more depth on that right here. Okay, so in Strabo, book 17, chapter 3. Okay, in paragraph 19, he says, above the coast, which extends from Carthage to Sicily, into the land of the Massilians, lies the land of the Libo-Phoenicians, which extends to the mountainous country of the Gutilians, where Libya begins. Then he says the land above or south of the Gutilians is that of the Garamantes, which lies parallel to the former and is the land which Carthaginian stones are brought. So he's saying here that the area of Carthage, okay, below Carthage was inhabited by Libo-Phoenicians, meaning Libyan Phoenicians, meaning a mixture of Libyans and Phoenicians. And these were the people that made up the Carthaginians. Yes, these were the Carthaginians, the Libyan Phoenicians, okay? And we're going to get more depth on that. So, like I was saying yesterday, that these Libyans on the coast, they mixed with the Phoenicians and became the Carthaginians. And as I was saying, that people like to try to group the Egyptians with the Libyans, but okay, we know that the Libyans and the Egyptians, they were related. They were kinsmen, but the Libyans were not descendants of the Egyptians. Okay, so meaning that no Egyptians settled amongst the Libyans during pharaonic Egypt or dynastic Egypt. Okay, yes, the Libyans to the west of them were related to them, but kin to them, but not descendants of the Egyptians. So, but it's saying here that the Phoenicians settled amongst the Phoenicians settled amongst the Libyans and became the Carthaginians, and the Phoenicians, also the Greeks or of Cyrene, also settled amongst the Libyans and became the Cyrenians. Okay, and I'm going to go a little further. Okay, yeah, we're not going to deal with that. But it's showing you that the Berbers, who are the descendants of the Libyans mentioned by the Greeks, were mixed with Phoenician and Libyan. Okay, no Egyptians settled amongst them. We don't find that, but they were mixed with Phoenicians and Libyans, and later on came the Romans and the Arabs as later history. So we see here that all throughout history, these people known as the Berbers, okay, first mixed with Phoenicians, and then after they mixed with the Romans, and then the Vandals, and then after that they mixed with the Arabs in the 6th century AD. Okay, but we find no mixture of Egyptians. Okay, but to touch more on that, we're going to go to another part. We're going to go to Diodorus Siculus. Okay, so we can get a more in-depth understanding. Okay, but Diodorus Siculus. Okay, Diodorus Siculus in book 20, chapter 55. Okay, yes, book 20, chapter 55. He says here, okay, let's go down here. Book 20, chapter 55. Diodorus states, and quote, "For 4 stocks have divided Libya. The Phoenicians, who at the time occupied Carthage." Okay, let's read it over. He says, "For 4 stocks have divided Libya. The Phoenicians, who at the time occupied Carthage, the Libya Phoenicians, who have many cities along the sea and intermarry with the Carthaginians, and who received this name as a result of the interwoven ties of kinship." And he says, "Of the inhabitants, the race that was most numerous and oldest was called Libyan, and they hated the Carthaginians with a special bitterness because of the weight of their overlordship. And last were the nomads, who pastured their herds over a large part of Libya as far as the desert." Okay, so now we see here that Diodorus mentions 4 stocks of Libya. Okay, the Phoenicians, the Libyan Phoenicians, the Libyans, who were the most largest population, and the nomads. Now, the nomads are the Numidians. Nomads, they're just another name for the Numidians. When you read about the empire of the Numidia or Numidians, that's what Diodorus is talking about here. They were also called nomads. That's where Numidians derives from. It means nomad. Okay, and it is saying that the Libyan Phoenicians mixed with the Phoenicians and became the Carthaginians, and then you had other Libyans, non-Phoenician Libyans living near them, and you had the Numidians or the nomads in the interior part, which he mentions the desert. As far as the desert, that's the interior part of Libya. So you had Carthage in the north, you had the Libyan Phoenicians a little further to the south, okay, or in the interior, You had the Libyans bordering them, and then a little further south, you had the nomads in the deserts. Okay, that's what he's talking about here. Okay. So it's giving you an ideal of who the Libyans or the ancestors of the Berbers mixed and mingle with during the 5th century through the 1st century BCE. Okay, this is the ancient Libyans. Okay, showing you that they mixed with the Phoenicians. So next we're going to deal with now that we covered that. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, I also want to touch on West Africa being called the Sudan, but a little summary of what we just touched on. Okay, now we learn according to the text what I just read. Okay, that the Ethiopians in West Africa were the same as the Ethiopians south of Egypt, and I guess I'll touch on it again, showing that how these Ethiopians mix with Egyptians. And I'm going to do that briefly. I'm not going to take long to do that. Okay. I know I went over yesterday, but we may have some new people here. So I'll go over it again. Okay. It says, okay, right here in Herodotus, book 2, chapter 29. I'm going to go straight to it. The country above Elephantine is habited by Ethiopians, who possess one half of this island, the Egyptians occupying the other. Okay, so it's saying that right after Elephantine, you have a mixture of Egyptians and Ethiopians. And I also read that earlier from Strabo. Okay, when he mentions the mixture of Egyptians and Ethiopians in Philae. Okay, the island of Philae. Okay, which I will read again. Okay. Okay. It says, Strabo, book 17, chapter 49. A little above the cataract lies Philae, a common settlement of Ethiopians and Egyptians, which is built like Elephantine. Okay. And it has Egyptian temples. So we see here, according to Strabo and Herodotus, the Egyptians mixed with the Ethiopians. Wherever the Ethiopians were, the Egyptians were. Okay. So showing you that Ethiopia means Egyptian and Kushite, or indigenous African and Egyptian, but it's showing you that the Ethiopians were a mixture of Egyptians. That's what it's telling you here. Okay. And as I was saying earlier, during the conquest of the 18th dynasty, okay, we see all the temples in Nubia, showing that not only did the Egyptians conquer Nubia and reach Nubia, but they settled Nubia, because those are Egyptian temples in Nubia in Sudan, built by Egyptians, and they settled there. Okay. But yeah, so we already learned that. Okay. And I'm going to go over again because some people might be new here, and they might not have tuned in yesterday to the live stream, but I'm going to show you here where he mentions mixture of Egyptians and Ethiopians. Okay. But not only does he mention Egyptians and Ethiopians to the south, he also mentions them in the west, in Libya. Okay. Which I will touch on. He says here, okay. He says, yes, He says here, Herodotus, book 2, chapter 42. Therefore, the Egyptians give their statues of Jupiter or Zeus the face of a ram. From them, the practice has passed to the Armenians, who are a joint colony of Egyptians and Ethiopians, and speak a language between the two. Hence, it is my opinion that the latter people took their name of Armenians, since the Egyptian name for Zeus or Jupiter is Amun. So he's saying that the people of the Armenians, who were the people of Amun, which is located in modern day Siwa, were a mixture of Egyptians and Ethiopians. And he's saying that Zeus and Amun is one and the same God. Okay, so showing you that Ethiopians were mixed with Egyptians. Okay, now this all has to do with dynastic history. Okay, now the history, the migrations that you learned today, that deals with archaeology and DNA, really has nothing to do with this. Okay, this is within a category of its own. Okay, this is talking about dynastic history. Okay, when you deal with the Ethiopians and the Egyptians, okay, it's talking about dynastic history. Okay, and when Boko Ray said yesterday that Egypt was uninhabited before the medieval time, well, this proves that wrong, and I already proved you wrong with the source that you gave me, Al Masudi. Okay, showing that the migration also took place south, not just west. And also, when you look at the civilization of Dar Tachit in Mauritania, it dates back to 2500 BCE. Okay, long before the medieval period. And there are also ties between Dar Tachit and the Kerma civilization in Egypt. There are similarities between those two. Now, Kerma was ruled and inhabited by Cushites before the Egyptian conquest. So Kerma, the people of Kerma, and all the rest of the people along south of Egypt during that time were what we call non-Egyptian Cushites. Okay, but later on, as the Egyptians got more control of that territory and started to settle in that territory, that population became a mixture of Egyptian and Cushites, and they became later known as the Ethiopians. Okay, and these Egyptians also went west and mixed with the indigenous Africans towards the west and became the Ethiopians. Okay, now, and I will say that these indigenous Africans in the southern interior part, according to Herodotus, were known as the Garamantes. So it would be more plausible to say that the Egyptians migrated west and mixed with these Garamantes and became the Western Ethiopians. Okay, because according to Herodotus, the Garamantes were a great and powerful nation. And I'm going to go to that. Okay, I'm going to go to that. We go to Herodotus, book 4. Okay, book 4, chapter 181. Okay, and he says here, Herodotus, book 4, chapter 181, showing you the location of the Armenians. Okay, because you always want to prove what you're saying with the primary source. That way, it's more, it validates it more. Because if you try to prove it with later sources, then the person can go to the primary source and say, nope, that's not the case. Those people didn't live there. According to the primary source, this is where they live. So you have to go to the oldest sources. But here in book 181, now we're going to go to a different translation. Okay, But it says Herodotus, book 4, chapter 181. Thus then have been mentioned those nomad Libyans who live along the sea coast. Okay. So he's speaking of the nomad Libyans or the Libyan tribes along the Mediterranean Sea in the north. And he said, above these inland is the region of Libya, which has wild beasts. And above the wild beast region, there stretches a raised belt of sand extending from Thebes of the Egyptians to the pillars of Hercules. And he says, in this belt, at intervals about 10 days' journey, there are fragments of salt and great lumps forming hills. And at the top of each hill shoots from the middle of the salt a spring of water, cold and sweet. And then he goes on to say, and about the spring dwell men at the furthest limit towards the desert, meaning far in the interior. Okay. And he says, first, at a distance of 10 days' journey from Thebes are the Armenians. So he's saying that the Armenians dwelt west of Thebes and was a 10 days journey. And we know today that that is the area of the Siwa Oasis. Okay. It's pretty much north. Today on the map, it is pretty much northwest of Thebes. Okay. But it's still west. Okay. And he says, yes, first at a distance of 10 days journey from Thebes are the Armenians, whose temple is derived from that of the Theban Zeus or the Theban Amen. For the image of Zeus or Amen in Thebes, as I have said before, has a head of a ram. Okay. Showing that their temple was derived from Thebes or Waset in Egypt. Now, some of you may have the question of why was a temple or an oracle of Amen was built in the Siwa Oasis? Well, I'm going to give you a brief history lesson on why is that. And this temple was built because the city of Thebes or Waset in Egypt, in southern Egypt, or what we know today as Luxor, was attacked, sacked, and destroyed by the Assyrians in 650 BCE. And it is during this time that those Egyptians in southern Egypt migrated south and migrated west. And when they migrated west, they built the new temple of Amen or the temple of Zeus. And this became the new temple or the new oracle of Amen, because the old temple of Amen in Thebes or Waset was destroyed and razed to the ground by the Assyrians. So the Egyptians, when they moved west, they built this temple of Amen in the Siwa Oasis. Okay. And I also have records showing that they went further west. Okay. And mixed with the Ethiopians already there. Now we have to keep in mind that the Ethiopians were already there. And those Ethiopians that were already there had Egyptian ancestors that goes back to the 18th dynasty. But this is talking about the Assyrian period. Okay, because the oldest date of this temple in the Siwa Oasis dates back to the 25th and 26th dynasty. It goes no further back than that, showing that this temple was built after the temple of Amen in Thebes or Waset was destroyed by the Assyrians. And the Assyrians ruled Egypt and Thebes a couple years after that. So, and these Egyptians from southern Egypt that went west never came back. They stayed west and they mixed with the Ethiopians already there. And they built the temple of Amen, which was the new oracle in the new temple of Amen during the time of Herodotus. Okay. Now we know that Herodotus lived 2,500 years ago. So there were some events that he didn't know about. So pretty much we know more than Herodotus. Us that is living today, we know more than Herodotus. Yes, because Herodotus knew nothing about the conquest of the 18th dynasty. And he also knew nothing about the destruction of Thebes by the Assyrians. He doesn't mention it. But we see here that the temple of Siwa corresponds perfectly with that event. Okay, that's why the temple of Siwa was built, because the old temple of Amun was destroyed by the Assyrians, and Herodotus had no knowledge of the Assyrian attack on Egypt or the Assyrian attack on Thebes or Waset. He had no knowledge of it, but yet he mentions the temple of Amun in Siwa, and that temple ties perfectly to that event. That's why you have a temple of Amun in Libya or in Siwa in the west. Okay, because the Egyptians migrated west and they also went south during this time. Okay, when the Assyrians attacked Egypt, and that is what I call the second migration from Egypt, or after the fall of Egypt. Okay, now the Egyptians that became the Ethiopians, that migration took place during the glory days of Egypt, during the conquest of Egypt, which was before the Assyrian attack on the city of Thebes. Okay, and we also have to keep in mind that Thebes or Waset, this was the first time that Thebes was attacked. Yes. The first time that Thebes was attacked. It wasn't attacked before this. It was never touched by anybody. Okay. This was the first time that Thebes was attacked. Okay. Now, before this, the Assyrian king that goes by the name of Esar or Esarhaddon, he attacked and destroyed the city of Memphis to the north. Okay. And his son, which goes by the name of Ashurbanipal, he went further south and attacked and destroyed the city of Thebes or Waset. His father attacked and destroyed the city of Memphis in the north, and Ashurbanipal destroyed the city of Thebes in Waset. And this is why the Egyptians who migrated west built the temple of Amun in Siwa. That is tied to that event. You can go no further than that or go after that. This is the time when the oracle of Amun or the oracle at Siwa was built. Okay, when we put things in a historical perspective. Okay, because if you don't put things in a historical perspective, it's not going to make any sense. Okay, so in keeping things in a historical perspective also validates these claims as well. But yeah, so we learned that, okay, that the Ethiopians were a mixture of Egyptians, and the Libyans or Berbers in the north were a mixture of Phoenicians. So pretty much, okay, to all you people in North Africa, okay, when you receive those refugees that's coming from Ethiopia, Eritrea, and the sub-Saharan part of Africa, know that you are dealing with the descendants of the pharaohs, okay? Not just some primitive Africans as the Europeans would want you to believe. You are dealing with the direct descendants of the ancient Egyptians and the pharaohs, okay? When you look at those people, their phenotype, you see the ancient Egyptians in them, okay? So therefore, they deserve respect. You should treat them with the utmost respect, okay? And stop looking down on our brothers and sisters from sub-Saharan Africa, okay? With this slave trade going on, okay? And mistreating of Black Africans from the sub-Saharan region. And you mistreat them because of the lies you were told by the racist European. But I'm showing you right here, right now, that those people, our people, the Ethiopians, okay, the Sudanese, okay, the people of Chad, the people of Niger, the people of West Africa, Mali, Ghana, Senegal, are all the descendants of the pharaohs and the Egyptians. We have the blood of the pharaohs and the Egyptians running through our veins, not you. Okay, to you Europeans and Berbers. Okay, to you mixture of Greek, Phoenician, and Roman and Arab Berbers. Okay, who have no ties to ancient Egypt, no mixture to ancient Egypt. Know that those refugees coming into your country from sub-Saharan Africa to get a better life are the descendants of the ancient Egyptians. And you should show them the utmost respect because that's who they are. Okay? And we know that from the news that when these Africans show up in these parts of northern Africa and Israel, that they are mistreated. They are mistreated because of the lies that was told by the Europeans. Okay, so they look at them as the Nigger word. Okay, they look at them as the N word, but no, they are greater than that. When we deal with the Ethiopians, we're not just dealing with some primitive Africans. We're dealing with a people with the richest and greatest origin of all ancient Africans. Okay. Even the Egyptians themselves talked highly of the Ethiopians because all information about the Ethiopians derived from the Egyptians. Okay, even according to Diodorus Siculus, book 3, the founders of Egypt were Ethiopians. Okay, they came from the area of Kush. Okay, during the time when Ethiopia was called Kush, during the time that there was no Egypt, there was only Kush. And later on, when the Egyptian empire grew and thrived, these Egyptians went back into Kush and west into the interior of Africa and became the Ethiopians. So we are both the ancestors and the descendants of ancient Egypt. And we deserve the utmost respect, okay? No more of this downplaying and discrediting of our ancestors. The truth must be known, okay? Whatever your DNA study says, okay, leave it at that. Okay, that's a study that's within its own category. Okay, but that whatever your DNA study says, that does not take away the fact that the people of West Africa are also the Ethiopians. Okay, the people of West Africa were Ethiopians. Your DNA study does not take that away because your DNA study is a different category from this. Okay. All right. So we learned that I'm going to touch on one more thing, then I'm going to close out. So we learned that all the people of sub-Saharan Africa were called Ethiopians. And the origin of the Ethiopians were a mixture of Egyptians who migrated there and mixed with the indigenous Africans and became the Ethiopians. And I rest my case on that. But I'm going to end it about 3:30 here. I'm going to go about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to end it. Then I'm going to look at the comment section and answer some questions. But yes, I want to go here to the geographer and the traveler of Ibn Battuta. Okay, he was an Arab traveler who lived during the 13th century AD, which was 700 years ago, and he traveled Africa. Okay, and I'm going to touch on a little what he had to say, just so I can show you something. Okay, but I'm going to show here that he is speaking on the Sudan. Okay, now some of you may say, well, yeah, the Sudan. Well, he's talking about modern day Sudan. No, he's not talking about modern day Sudan. No way. He's talking about the Sudan in West Africa. Okay, and I'm going to show you. Okay. See, soon as I say or someone say Sudan, automatically it pops up in your head modern day Sudan, south of Egypt, East Africa. No. It's talking about the Western Sudan. Okay. And he says here, okay, talks about the Sudan. I'm just going to start with what he says at the beginning. He says, I then proceeded from Abu Latin to Mali, the distance of which is a journey of 4 days, 4 and 20 days, or 24 days, made with effort. Okay. Okay, then, and further down, he says, in the same paragraph, he says, the gourd grows so large in Sudan that they will cut one into halves, and out of these make 2 large dishes. Okay, it just showed that it's showing that it calls the area Sudan. Okay, and I'm going to then further down he says, okay, Ibn Battuta says, when he's speaking of Sudan, we then left this place and came to the great river, which is the Nile. Okay. Now, when I say that, it automatically will pop up in your head is what it's talking about the Nile in Sudan today or in Egypt. No, no, it's talking about the Niger River in West Africa. That's what it's talking about. So, and I'm going to show you later, but when he says, we then left this place and came to the great river, which is the Nile. Ibn Battuta is calling the Niger River the Nile. Yes, the Niger River used to be called the Nile. That shows you the deep connection that West Africa had with Egypt, that the river was called the Nile. Okay, and it wasn't called the Niger River until the 15th century AD. By Leo Africanus. After Leo Africanus, then it took the name the Niger River, but it used to be called the Nile. In the land was it wasn't always called West Africa; it was called Sudan, as I just showed. So the land was called Sudan, and the river was called the Nile, showing you how connected our ancestors in West Africa were to Egypt and the Nile Valley. It gets no more clearer than that. Okay? I mean, I don't know what more do you want. Okay? And we even found out that the mummy of Ramesses III, okay, had the same DNA as West and Central Africans. But even that's not good enough for you. You know, that's not good enough for you. I just seen the message from Ma'at Forever saying he's signing out. Okay, yeah, peace, brother, brother Shaka, Ma'at Forever, and thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your attention. And peace to brother Chris Anthony Harris. If I missed your comment, I apologize about that, but I was in the middle of giving this lesson. Okay. I know Anthony Harris is a busy man, so he probably don't have time to tune into the whole thing. But yeah, peace and peace to African Queen. Okay. Yeah, peace, African Queen. Let's see here. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, African Queens. It's Hello Radio 1, bringing in that truth. I see you, brother. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, my queen. Yes, this truth must be known, okay? Because if we don't teach it, if we don't teach this truth and make it known, it's never going to be known. It's going to be brushed under the rug, and our people will be ignorant for it, and they will forever, their entire life, live a lie, whether it be Hebrew Israelite, Moor, or Aborigine, or just West African with no roots to Egypt. They will forever live a lie. And it is important that this knowledge gets out. Okay. but just give me a minute. Okay. Yeah, and peace to as well another sister. Where is that comment? Okay. Where is that sister? Oh yeah, from May 92001. Hotep in the chat. Yeah. Peace to you, May 92001. And thank you for tuning in as well, sister. You know, I do my best. You know, YouTube and all of these live formats, you know, they make it very difficult to teach this information, you know, and I'm thinking about getting StreamYard. That way I'll be able to screen share it and all that. But I'm busy on my new channel, and hopefully I should upload my first video on my new channel sometime next week. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm going to get back into the lesson, and I'm going to end it there. Okay. Okay. And Ibian Battuta, okay, he says, we then left this place and came to the great river, which is the Nile. Up on it is the town of Karsanju, which the Nile descends. Okay, we're going to go further down. Okay, it says Karsanju, on which the Nile descends to Kabara and then to Zaga, the inhabitants which were the first in these parts to embrace Islam. They are religious and fond of learning. From this place, the Nile descends to Timbuktu, then to Kaukau or Gal. Okay, it says the Nile descends to Timbuktu, both which we shall give an account. It then proceeds to the town of Muli, which is in the extreme district of Mali. It then goes to Yufi, the greatest district of Sudan, and the king which is most potent. Okay, then it says the Nile descends from this place to the countries of Nubia, the inhabitants of which are Christians, then to Dongola, which is the oldest district they possess. Okay, and then it says the Nile then descends to the cataracts, which terminates the regions of Sudan, dividing them from Upper Egypt. Okay, now we see here that Ibian Battuta calls the Niger the Nile. When he says it descends, the Nile descends to Timbuktu, through Gal and all through Mali. That is the Niger River. Okay, when we deal with Timbuktu, Kaukau or Gal in Mali, we're in West Africa. That is what we know today as the Niger River. But Ibian Battuta is saying that it was the Nile. Okay, he called the Nile the Niger River. Now he makes the mistake of trying to connect the Niger River to the Nile in Nubia or Sudan and Egypt, but it was not connected. Okay, but there was a caravan road that connected Egypt to West Africa or to the Niger River. Okay, and this was mistaken for, you know, that the Nile rivers, the Niger River and the Nile River of Egypt was connected, but it was actually two separate rivers. Okay, but still, although the Niger River was a separate river from the Nile of Egypt, we still have to keep in mind that the Niger River was still called the Nile. That was the name of the Niger River. So it doesn't matter if it was not connected to the Nile of Egypt. It was still called the Nile, and the people dwelling there came from Egypt in the land of Cush and settled there, and we know why it was called the Nile, because the people that came from Egypt and Nubia who settled along what we know today as the Niger called it the Nile, because they came from the Nile of Egypt. That's why it was called the Nile. And that's why it was called the Sudan. Because it was all, these were all the same race of people who came from the same origin. Okay. That's why they had the same name of their land and the same name of their river. And they were known as Sudanese. Okay. Because they came from the east. That's why the Niger was called the Nile. Okay. That's the real reason. That's the historical reason why the Niger was called the Nile. Not because they thought it was connected to the Nile. Okay. That is the reason. As a matter of fact, which I will touch off into later, that is the reason why the Niger was called the Nile in the first place, because of this migration of Egyptians coming into West Africa. Yes, which I will show in later videos. But yes, according to sources, when we go to the earliest source that mentions this, we see that the Niger River was called the Nile because of this migration from Egypt to West Africa. Okay, and according to Herodotus, which I will touch on later on, there was a great river that flowed from west to east. Okay, and he called it the Nile of Libya. Okay, it was a great river that flowed from west to east, and the people who settled on this Nile of Libya were known as Ethiopians, and that is why he calls the Ethiopians of Libya. Okay, and we also find Ethiopians in the desert part. Ethiopians all through West Africa, all through the southern Sahara part of the desert. Ethiopians all on the Niger River. And Herodotus says that, keep in mind, okay, because I study this, okay, I've been studying this for a long time. I know what I'm talking about. Okay. Now, a lot of scholars gave up on this and they went to other fields. I never gave up on this. Okay. And besides, here where I live at, they have no universities that teach meta classes, but I will probably get off into that later on in the future. But I've been studying this for a long time. I am the master of this subject. This is my subject. I own it. Can't nobody tell me nothing about this. I can only correct you on this. Okay. You can't tell me nothing about this. Okay. Because this is my subject. These were my ancestors. So therefore, this is my subject and I own it. And it should be the same with you, Black Americans and sub-Saharan Africans. You have to own this subject. You have to read it, study it, and know it, and allow no one to tell you about it. We have to stop allowing these Europeans to tell our history, to tell us a fake and pseudo version of our history. We have to stop allowing them to lie to us about our history and study and read and know our own history. Okay? No, don't do that. Don't say, well, I'm just going to get off into archaeology and study Kemet and the Meta and forget about the Ethiopians and no, we have to connect it all. Okay, we have to take it all back, whether it be Mizraim, Kush, Ethiopian, Kemet, it all connects. It's all the same people in the same geographical location. Okay, we have to take it all back. We can't separate it or divide it. Okay, it all connects. It's all dealing with the same people, but during different periods of time. So but yeah, but we just read, okay, that I'm gonna cut it short there, but we just read from Ibn Battuta that the Niger was called the Nile. And not only do Ibn Battuta calls the Niger the Nile, every other Arab historian or medieval Arab historian and geographer also calls the Niger the Nile. Okay, other Arab historians such as Ibn Khaldun, okay, and other Arab historians, Al-Idrisi calls the Niger the Nile. Okay, it gets no more convincing than that. I don't know more. I mean, I don't know what more do you want? The people of Sudan, I mean, the people of West Africa come from the same origin as the people of Southern Egypt and Sudan. That's all you need. I mean, just do the research. You know, I mean, you just want to put all your faith in a DNA study? Screw a DNA study. You know, it's not all about DNA. Most of those DNA studies are controlled by racist neo-Nazi geneticists. So, of course, those DNA studies are not going to tell the truth. If you want to know the truth of a DNA study, do your own DNA study. Stop trusting in these white racists telling you your history through a pseudo-fabricated DNA study. Yes, I study DNA. I've been studying DNA for a long time. And the reason I do not entertain DNA because it's so much corruption. There's so much corruption and so much fabrication going on with it. And it's not corresponding with history, with real history, historical reality. And that's why I cannot go with the DNA studies that's being put out today, because these DNA studies makes no sense. And they're being conducted by white racist, neo-Nazi German geneticists. And no wonder why it makes no sense, because that's who is conducting these DNA studies. Okay, these same DNA studies that are whitewashing, that are trying to whitewash ancient Egypt. Okay, so that's why I do not entertain the DNA studies, okay, until some errors are fixed with DNA and haplogroup studies. I'm not going to entertain it, because it's something is very wrong with it, and it's not adding up. Okay, but until the meantime, I'm going to stick with history. Okay, archaeology. Okay, so what did we learn? The Ethiopians were the same. The Ethiopians of West Africa were the same as those in East Africa. Okay, and the Libyans to the north mixed with the Phoenicians, and the Niger was called the Nile. Okay, with all this history that's not being taught, you have the archaeology with the temples and the pyramids. Okay, and the writings of the Meta Netter connects with everything I'm saying. Connects. Okay, true cross-referencing, connecting the dots, which the racist European of the past failed to do. Yes, they failed. And a lot of black scholars today, okay, because they are slaves to these teachings, are also failing to do that. They're only focusing on one field and neglecting the other. Okay? And that is wrong. But let's go to the comments, and we're going to cut it short here, okay? But yeah, feel free to comment. Are there any questions? You can answer some questions for about a couple minutes. Shout out to everybody. But yeah, I mean, I love teaching this. This information belongs to us, and somebody got to teach it. And I'm not even done yet. And when I start my new channel, I will be teaching from a platform that allows me to show my sources. That way you will see a more professional platform that allows me to teach and show my sources and educate you and show you what I'm talking about better. Okay. But yeah, we're gonna go up and okay. So pretty much no questions. People just listening in. You know, I can respect that. But you know, I'm opening the floor for questions if you want to put any in the chat. You know, but yeah, we have to get this out, okay? And I've been calling out other so-called scholars to discuss this, to debate this, and I even asked to come on their platform to debate it, but they don't want to talk about it, you know. And I'm going to be getting later on a StreamYard where I can put out the link for other users to come on as well. So that'll be good. But yeah, I'm gonna see how things go with this StreamYard. But we have a question from Chi 317 of 15. Okay. Okay, what do you think of the Nagas? Yeah, the Nagas. Okay, the Nagas are Naga. The word Naga means king. Okay, and it is a word used for king in what we know today as modern day Ethiopia, or formerly Abyssinia. And these Nagas, they spread all throughout Asia and created civilizations. I know my brother Sarwa Seti did a whole lecture on that. And but yeah, maybe I will do a lecture on that as well. I haven't. It's been a while since I looked into the sources of that, so I pretty much forgot some of that information. But maybe I'll look more into that and refresh my memory and come back and do a live stream about it. But yeah, but as far as I know, the Naga means king, and the Nagas originated from Africa, and they spread throughout Asia and built the civilizations of Angkor Wat and other parts of Asia and India and China. So they were like, you know, the founders of the civilizations in Asia. You know, but that's my stance on it. And we have a sister, Moon Green. Hello from Puntland. Yeah, peace, my Somalian sister, Moon Green. It's good to have you in the building. Yes, but the purpose of this video is to show the kinship that African Americans have with East Africans. And we have to embrace that kinship, okay? And throw away the lies that we were taught by the white racists, okay? Now, it is a known fact that the white racist scholars of Western Europe and here in America, because Black Americans were their slaves and West Africa was the land that they were taken from, they did all they can to disrespect and downgrade and downplay the history of West Africa, making East Africans feel that they are better than us, okay? Making East Africans feel they are better than us when we are kin, when we come from the same origin and have a close kinship with each other, okay, and trying to make the North Africans feel, the Berbers feel like they better than us and talk down on us, which is not right, okay? But yeah, that is the purpose of doing this video. And and it is very important because those sources, such as I read from, such as Strabo, Diodorus Siculus, from the Arab, I mean, they have a lot of valuable information in it, and it's not being taught. Okay, it's not being taught, and I don't have to teach about the entire books of Strabo and these Greek historians. I just teach where it's talking about us, where it's talking about Africa, the Ethiopians, where it's talking about us. So, but yeah, that was the purpose of this video, and to show that the Egyptians, okay, who were black, felt more comfortable settling amongst the sub-Saharan Africans in the south. They didn't settle amongst the Arabians in the east. They didn't settle amongst the Berbers to the west. They settled amongst the Ethiopians or the sub-Saharan Africans to the south and to the southwest. To the south, and what we know today as Sudan, and to the southwest of what we know today as West Africa. Yes. So, so we see here, you know, according to ancient historian and geographers, okay, the land of Libya and the territory of Ethiopia, the territory of the Ethiopians was all the land on the west bank of the Nile River. All the 3,000-mile land was inhabited by the same people. Okay, now you have to keep in mind the Medu Neter, or the ancient records of Egypt, is not going to tell you everything. Okay, all you get from the Medu Neter or the ancient records of Egypt is the conquests of the pharaohs. Okay, but you get from historians like Herodotus, Diodorus Siculus, and Strabo of the settlement of these people or the migration of these people. Okay, but yeah, okay, the ignorance has got to stop. It's got to stop. Okay, the truth must come out. This ignorance that West Africans have nothing to do with Egypt must stop. And hopefully next time when I have a live stream, I can have a discussion. That's what I want to do. Yes, that's what I want to do. I'm about to close out here in a minute, but that's what I want to do. I want to have a discussion with someone that disagrees with me, with someone that feels the opposite, with someone that says that West Africa has nothing to do with Egypt. Okay, and they're all, but most of them are running. Okay, even when I debate them in on the comment section, when we leave messages, they never respond back when I ask them key questions. So that's who I want to debate. Hopefully in the next live stream, that someone can come on here, and I'm going to look for someone to have this discussion with, because I want to see their sources. Okay, and I know for a fact that their sources are late and pseudo, and they're not going to hold. They're not going to hold any weight. Okay, the sources are weak, late, and pseudo. Keep that in mind, people. The people who say to you that West Africans has nothing to do with Egypt, they either have no sources at all to prove it, or their sources are very late and pseudo. Okay, you can't use late sources to speak on ancient people that lived 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Okay, for example, I can use a 16th century or 1700 sources to speak on the Atlantic slave trade, because the Atlantic slave trade was taking place during that time and a little bit before that time. So that source during that time period will validate what was going on during the Atlantic slave trade, because that source is contemporary with that time. Okay, but you can't use a 17th century or 16th century source to prove that you are the descendants of the Hebrew Israelites or of the Egyptians that lived 2,000, 3,000 years ago. No, that is pseudo. That is when pseudo scholarship is at its best. And you do not want to do that. You don't want to do that. Okay, it's better to say you just don't know, okay, than do that, because you're going to be committing fraud and forgery, and you're going to be lying to the people, and you don't want to do that, okay? Okay, that's like a criminal committing a crime, going to rob a bank, okay, and he gets caught, and he gets 50 years in prison or life in prison. Okay, when he could have just stayed home and not did it at all and still had his freedom. Okay, same thing with this. Okay, instead of using late sources and committing fraud and forgery, it's better to say you just don't know. Or the best thing is just go to the earliest sources that is contemporary with that time to prove your point. Okay? Say, for instance, the Hebrew Israelites who claim to be Hebrew Israelites. If you can't prove you are a Hebrew Israelite with the Bible, then you can't prove it at all. You have to prove it with the Bible. You can't go to Josephus during the first century AD to prove that you are a Hebrew Israelite. Okay, you can't go to a 17th century source to prove that you are Hebrew Israelites. You can't go to Al-Idrisi to prove that you are a Hebrew Israelite. Yes, those sources may mention people of the Hebrew faith or Jews in West Africa, but you have to go to the Bible to validate it. Okay, you have to show a passage from the Bible that validates that validates your proof of that coming from that 17th century source. And if it's not in the Bible, then it's invalid. Okay? Yeah, but like I was saying, like when it comes to the Hebrew Israelites, the source is the Bible. Okay? And if you can't prove it from the Bible, you can't prove it at all. That's why it is important to prove your point with these ancient sources. Okay? Now, yeah, we got a brother comment from brother Thoth Tank. Gotta go to the book of fairy tales. Yes, indeed. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely a book of fairy tales. Okay, because when you deal with the Bible, okay, and you're trying to claim the Hebrew Israelites, but your ancestors who were taken from the slave ships, who were put on the slave ships and brought to America, came from West Africa, lived in West Africa. But the Hebrew Israelites lived in Canaan. This is very far away, 3,000 miles away, not the same territory. Okay? So you have a problem there. Okay, you have to, when dealing with the Bible, the Israelites, we know in the Bible that the Israelites came from Egypt, okay, and became the 12 tribes of Israel, and were later attacked by the Assyrians and Babylonians, and were taken to Babylon in Assyria, and the rest escaped into Egypt and Cush. But West Africa is nowhere mentioned. Okay? So that's why geography is important, because geography lets you know who the text is talking about. So it's talking about Israel in the land of Canaan, but your ancestors are in West Africa. You know what that means? It's not talking about you. It's talking about those people in Canaan. And the other problem is if you don't show a migration in the Bible, okay, of Israelites moving west to West Africa and establishing a colony there, if you can't show that migration, then that means it's not talking about you. You have another problem, okay? At least with the Phoenicians and the foundation of Carthage, at least we see a migration going west of Phoenician Canaanites. We know that the Israelites went south into Egypt, into Cush, but no migration west. Okay? So it's best to just say you don't know instead of, because I don't like interpolations. I don't like it. When people add interpolations, try to add something to a text that don't belong there. I don't like doing that. I like reading from it. I like telling it like it is. But just like the Bible says, tell as it is written. Okay. Well, you have those Hebrew Israelites that go to the passage in the Bible that says the Israelites dwelt beyond the rivers of Cush. Well, the rivers of Cush, this is talking about West Africa. No, it's not. Okay. In order for you to prove that verse is talking about West Africa, it would have to say beyond the rivers of Cush towards the farthest land, in the farthest land towards the sunset. And then you are in West Africa. Okay. Or beyond the rivers of Cush towards the farthest land in the west, then you're in West Africa. But if it just says the beyond the rivers of Cush and nothing else, then no, you can't locate that in West Africa because it's not giving you enough geographical details to locate that in West Africa. Okay. That's when the geography expertise come into play. Okay. When it says beyond the rivers of Cush, we really don't even know what part of Cush they dwelt in. It just says beyond the rivers of Cush. Okay, if it had said beyond the rivers of Cush to the sources of the Nile, then we will know that there was either in Uganda or Lake Tana in Ethiopia. So that's why, we have to be certain and exact of what we're talking about when we mention these people in the location they dwelt in. And if the text doesn't give you enough details to pinpoint where those people dwelt at, then you're just going to have to conclude and say that I don't know. Yes, we know that they dwelt so-and-so, but we don't know where they dwelt in that area. Okay? But yeah, but that's how scholarship works. Okay? And I don't go by this white racist pseudo form of scholarship. Okay? I go by my own honest way of scholarship. Okay? When it comes to honesty, I'm number one in that. Okay? See, and a lot of these scholars, they're very dishonest, and that's not good. Okay? We have to be honest first. Okay? Honesty is what makes you qualify. Okay? You can have a lot of information, but that doesn't mean you have the truth. Okay? Okay? I mean, you can have a refrigerator full of food, but that doesn't mean all that food is going to be fresh. Okay? It's like you can have a house full of garbage and junk. Well, what you have to do, you have to get rid of some of that garbage. Some of you have to reject some of this information you're teaching because it's pseudo information. It's not the truth. Yes, you have a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of information, but you have little truth. That's why I study only truth. Like back in the days when I was starting out in this, I also had a lot of knowledge, but now I'm seeking truth. Okay, no matter how small or how limited the truth is, I want the truth, and I'm looking for the truth, and I'm going to teach you the truth. Okay, I'm not going to waste my time teaching you something that's based on my own theory and my own imagination. No, I'm going to teach you the truth, no matter how small or how limited it is, whether if it's coming from a 2-sentence or 3-sentence text. If it has any truth in it, I want to know it, and I'm going to teach it to you. So, yeah, so no questions, but yeah, I'm going to end it there. Okay, okay, and thank you all for your attention, and stay tuned for more videos. And I'm going to do a video posting the link of my new channel. And I'm not going to waste my time teaching you anything that has nothing to do with the truth. Okay, if it has nothing to do with the truth, okay, I'm not going to teach it. If it's not the truth, I'm not going to teach it. I'm only going to teach you the truth. And we have to stay loyal and true to these texts that was left to us by the ancients. And we have with our modern day knowledge, okay, because me as someone living in 2020, I know a little bit more than these ancient historians. But my knowledge help validates what they're saying or expand on what they're saying in the people that they're mentioning. Okay, we can't just discredit what they wrote because we feel that we have more knowledge. No. We have to keep in mind that they came before us, way before us, and we have to honor them. Okay? And the writings they left behind is very valuable. Okay? And that's what I'm going to be teaching on. We have to take back what's ours and we have to own it. Okay? No more of this BS. Okay? West Africans has just much of a right to Egypt than as East Africans do. And that is a truth that must be taught. And as I said, hopefully on the next live stream, I can get someone in here that I can debate and we can have a discussion. And you better believe I'm going to make him submit. I'm going to make him admit that he is wrong. Okay? Because they know they are wrong, but they're just so dishonest and so full of you know what that they can't admit that they are wrong. But if we get them here on the platform and get them on the panel, then we can see what's going on in that person's head and what source is he basing his knowledge off of. Okay, because I already know when it comes to this historical research, I mean, nobody does more than me. I already know. So yeah, we have brother Sloth Tank. Pardon, I meant Tales, Book of Fairy Tales, not Tales. Laughing out loud. Oops. Thanks for the shout out. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter. You know, Tales. You know, I knew what you were talking about. So you know, yeah, it doesn't matter what you wrote. But yeah, I knew that you meant fairy tales, as in Tales. Yeah, but it was still funny though. Yeah, definitely a book of fairy tales. Okay, so with that said, you know, all those people who say that West Africa has nothing to do with Egypt, okay, they have no problem of saying that the North Africans are the Berbers, and the Egyptians are the Egyptians. But when it comes to the sub-Saharan Africans, okay, we're something else. We can't be Ethiopians. Okay, we can't be Ethiopians, but the Egyptians can be Egyptians, and the Libyans can be Libyans or Berbers. But when it comes to us, we have to play the divide game. I mean, and it's all based on racism and pseudo scholarship to downplay us and to keep us down. And with that said, I'm going to cut it short. And hopefully we can get somebody in here who disagrees with me and feels the opposite way I do, and we can debate and come and get to the bottom of it. Okay, we can debate and get to the bottom of it and take it from there. But yeah, and with that said, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank you all for your attention. This truth must be told. You know, if you go back over the video, you know, you can go back over the parts where I went over the sources, and you can also do your own research. You know, take notes. If you took notes, do your own research, and you'll see what I'm talking about is true. Okay, the people who oppose us, they have nothing. Believe me when I say that. They have nothing but their opinion, and their opinion is not good enough. And they also have late pseudo history, and their late pseudo history is not good enough. Okay, so the fact that West Africans are the direct descendants of ancient Egyptians is a undisputed fact. Okay, that cannot be refuted by anyone's theory or anyone's late pseudo history. And with that said, this is your brother Radio 1 signing out, saying until next time, Egypt stays in Africa. Peace, Hotep, Ma'at, and Amun Ra. Signing out. Peace, brothers and sisters. See you next time.